What is love? Is it butterflies in your stomach? Is it putting your feet up and watching reruns of 90210 with your spouse of 30 years? Is it a continual flood of oxytocin released in your hypothalamus? Is it security? Is it trust? And is more always better?
Art thou a knave, Pinkle?
Do you think the invisible man gets lonely? For the past 4 years, I was in a polyamorous relationship. 2 years into our relationship, we moved in together, and my partner quickly became very immersed in a local polyamorous community. A community that's made up of only straight and bisexual people, with maybe one single exception. Fast forward about 10 months and we're having some issues in our relationship. Mostly it's me complaining that I don't get to spend much time with them anymore, because when they're not working, they're either out doing things with this poly community or spending time with individual people from the community. After a few months of this relationship tension that we were having, my partner declared that it is now actually a priority of theirs that I integrate myself into their community. They tell me it's in fact integral to our relationship that I become friends with their friends. Because I was invested in that relationship, I said, yeah, of course. They seemed so happy in their new community, so why not? But as I spent more time in those group spaces, I began to feel like very few people in that polyamorous community were interested in spending time with me, even in just like a friend kind of way. They didn't seem to want to get to know me or hang out with me.
Looking back now, why do you think that was?
I wasn't fuckable.
Oh, Jules. Hon, don't be so hard on yourself. You're a babe. I'm sure plenty of people want you. Maybe you just need to put yourself out there more. There are good folks in this community. The men are so woke, and there are plenty of bisexual women and non-binary people too. It's a great space.
Oh no, you don't. I put myself out there. If I put myself out there anymore, I'd be topless on Treasure Mountain covered in glitter and tulle singing Our Lady of the Underground with Dorothy Easton. My ex's continual insinuations that I wasn't trying hard enough or I wasn't giving the community a chance began to encroach into gaslighting territory. There was actually one bisexual person that I thought I was having a connection with, but after I was the one who organized our first hangout, and then our second, and then our third, and then our fourth, and then our fifth, I started to feel like they were only agreeing to hang out with me when they had nothing better to do. I haven't spoken to them in 6 months now because when I don't initiate a conversation, they don't talk to me. It didn't feel like a mutual friendship at all. But you know what? Since leaving your community, I've made plenty of friends. Yes, even a couple of straight men, without trying harder, without pushing myself to be out there more. It just happened naturally. I just did it by being myself. Because I finally found people who have other priorities than spending all their times with folks they want to date or fuck. Whoa, you know what? I'm just thinking about my life right now, and my community is my whole life, you know. And when I think about it, you're right. In true polyamorous community fashion, I have been consistently scheduling my calendar like a month or so in advance, and a solid 85% of that time is spent with people I'm fucking or I want to fuck. And while you're doing that, so is everybody else in your community. And that remaining 15% of time isn't necessarily going to be dedicated to platonic friendships. You've got your hobbies and the art that you're making, a house to clean, relatives to visit. And since I just happen to not date straight people or men of any sexuality, and there are no lesbians in your community, and I guess I also happen to not be compatible with the 1 or 2 bi folks who might have also been attracted to me, that meant that I was spending my 85% of my spare time with nobody. And that was after my ex had told me that I was going to integrate into their community. They always hung that responsibility on me, but it takes 2 to friendship, you know? I wanted so badly to have friends, but
people there didn't seem to want that from me. And that loneliness, my continually being rebuffed, was framed by my ex as my fault. A lack of conviction or effort on my part. Because their community was so kind and loving and woke, it couldn't possibly have anything to do with them. It wasn't a coincidence that when I was occasionally able to make time to hang out with folks one-on-one, they booked me 3 or 4 weeks in advance, whereas my bisexual ex managed to book one-on-one hangouts 2 or 3 days in advance. And the fact that they were naive enough to think that their abundant social capital had no effect on our vastly different experiences in that community boggles my mind.
When I finally had the awareness to approach my spouse and say, "Hey, I think I might be too gay for your friends," they bristled and snapped at me. "Are you calling my friends homophobic?" "Yes, I am, dear mother." Things got bad. Really, really bad. I was so taken aback, I just let them change the subject. I just believed them that their friends weren't homophobic, and I never questioned them about it again. For most of 2018, I was suicidal. By July of that year, I'd finally realized how serious it was, and I took 2 weeks off work to check myself into an IOP program, an intensive group counseling program typically reserved for people who have already attempted to take their own life. But after a phone call with the facilitators of the program, they believed I was a candidate. That was over a year ago. Now, I have a decent life. I experience joy more than I experience despair. I look forward to things, I get excited about events and people, and I like myself. No, I love myself. And I'm so glad I made it through that, because things got really, really scary. I had convinced myself that what my spouse had said was true and that the community was woke and supportive and loving and wasn't at all homophobic. I still couldn't make any friends in that community, so then the problem must be me. There must be something fundamentally wrong with who I am as a person, and that's why no one wanted to hang out with me and really commit the time to foster friendship with me. And that's when my mental health went to shit.
Communities aren't just built on constant group interaction. There needs to also be personal social relations, one-on-one time between people within a community to really deepen those bonds. I was never given access to that. I was never invited to hang out with people one-on-one, other than with my wife, of course, but I think even you and I, we never hung out socially, and you're the only person from there I still talk to. We're hanging out now, aren't we? No, you're just here to make this video. The moment I turn the camera off, you'll be leaving. Yeah, I do actually have a date at 3. There's so much unexamined privilege there that's just left unexamined. And even when someone does occasionally talk about it, nothing is then done to make the space better for minorities. In that space, social capital is sexual capital. Sexual capital is social capital. They're one and the same. So people who happen to just not be as fuckable because of our sexuality or whatever end up with no social capital and therefore no friends.
So do you want to continue to be polyamorous?
Well, yeah.
I'd like to know why, and also what that would look like for you. I'm polyamorous, but I don't ever want to be a part of a community that's built on that particular identity, especially one that's mostly straight and bi folks. It just amplifies the worst aspects of straight culture, who has social capital, who is excluded from community friendships and therefore community support. I had enough kids at school straight up avoid talking to me on the playground because my mum was a lesbian. I don't need that shit as an adult too. I just want to be a person who happens to date 1 or 2 or maybe 3 people, but who also has platonic friends that I deeply value and love. If you could say anything to your ex right now, what would it be? If there were no repercussions, if you never had to talk to them again,
What would you say?
You homophobic, selfish, gaslighting, elitist bug! You said that you were scared you'd lose your gay card if we broke up, like I was just some trophy for your sexuality? Well, I damn well hope you did! You're not qualified to date lesbians or gay non-binary people. Your community is a god-awful place to be gay, and you had to wait till someone inside your community told you that before you believed it? It really is a fucking cult then, huh? Where the comfort of the people inside your own group is more important than the life of your own spouse? More important than your own family? Well, fuck you!
Do you feel better?
No. Love may be infinite, but time is not. Plenty of anthropological evidence points to prehistoric humans as tending towards non-monogamous social structures. In fact, 93% of global societies have had some recorded form of socially sanctioned non-monogamy, and many of these societies were matrilineal, which is to say the family was structured around the mother, and women were often the heads of households. This was true of most societies up until about 15,000 years ago. That means that the matriarchal non-monogamous community structure made up about 95% of human history to date. Why the pervasiveness of monogamy came about is a bit of a chicken and an egg and a third other thing situation. But the general consensus seems to be that monogamy grew out of a scarcity mentality, hand in hand with the idea of private property. The advent of farming and agriculture is likely when the concept of private property arose. Wealth accumulation began where people would store more food and clothes and tools than they needed. Since some tribes had more land and cattle than others, a clear class division began to form along the lines of this wealth, and warring over land began. Originally, this wealth was still passed down through the matrilineal line. At some point along this timeline, however, societies became patriarchal. Now, an obvious effect of non-monogamy is that it's far more difficult to determine who a child's father is than who their mother is. So men in non-monogamous communities would either help to pitch in and raise all of the community's children, or they would sometimes help raise the children of their sisters instead. Now that men were positioned as the heads of households, they needed a way to ensure that their offspring would inherit their wealth. The only way of being sure of this was to introduce monogamy. Although plenty of societies still allowed men to be non-monogamous, so it was really the monogamy of the women which was enforced. But hold on, so the idea of monogamy came about because of wealth hoarding, land wars, and the patriarchy. Then any ethically non-monogamous community must be a really lovely and wholesome place to be, right? It's important to remember that we do still live in a 21st century capitalist world, which is starkly different from the way our hunter-gatherer ancestors lived. For example, a typical American worker will spend about 42.5 hours at work each week. Compare that to the average hunter-gatherer spending only about 15 hours per week working. Modern time restraints are a new source of pressure that hunter-gatherer tribes just didn't have to deal with. Love scarcity is a myth that polyamorists love to debunk, but they're now faced with a very real time scarcity that historical analysis cannot help them with. It's just absolutely reckless to imply that we can do non-monogamy the same way that our predecessors did and end up with an equal and egalitarian community, without also allowing for present-day context. I'm surprised then really that this video managed to turn out quite this long, when really the main thesis is, while love may be infinite, time is not, and people's energy is not, unless with that fucking Energizer Bunny. Or a Furby. Why won't you die? And if you have a community where most of the people are straight, and their values and priorities are to spend most of their time with people they want to sleep with,
then the people who fall outside of those attractions will obviously have less social capital and therefore less social connection and less community support. It's not rocket science, it's basic mathematics.
Transparency and self-awareness.
Here's the thing you might be thinking now. Well, how can we make this community more accessible to lesbians and gay folks? And I think the answer is you can't. You can't dictate what someone does with their free time, and that wasn't my problem. My problem was that no one was talking about it. And when I tried to bring up feeling isolated and alone in that space, I was shut down. But the straight people, they don't have time to hang out with lesbians or gay folks, because we're not fuckable. Yeah, there are some bi women and non-binary people, but most of you are spending most of your time dating men. I honestly do find it a little bit easier to connect with men. There's a social script that we've been fed our whole lives, which means I know how to flirt with them. I know how to read their interests and responses. I know the steps of the dance, which ones I'm expected to take and which ones he is. I do feel a little bit lost when I'm interested in a woman or non-binary person. I haven't been taught or shown how that romantic pursuit can look like outside of a heteronormative context. So yeah, sometimes it does feel like I have to put more work into strike up a romantic connection with a woman or non-binary person.
For a social group to actually be kind and open and accepting to people outside the group, that is, the group itself, and by extension people within the group, need to actively work to make the space or community welcoming and open. Simply not doing shitty things does not an ally make. A surprise! You actually do need to talk about group dynamics. Talk to the people outside the group about their experience. Talk to the people inside the group about the feedback you get. And discuss what you would like the out-group relations to look like. Not every group needs to be open to all people, but then be real about it. It's not that difficult. Look around you. Who is here? And more importantly, who is not? My problem isn't with people's value structures. I'm not trying to shut that down. If your life goal is just sleep with a lot of people or date a lot of people, then more power to you. My frustration is at the defensiveness and ignorance about that phenomenon. I'm just asking people to be honest about it. If you stand there and say, all right, I'll be real about it. I don't have time to be friends with gay people. Now, if that makes you feel awful about saying that, then you've got two solutions. One is just get comfortable with it. That's your chosen lifestyle. That's what you're doing with your life, so just own it. I don't have time to be friends with gay people doesn't mean that you hate us. Doesn't mean that you're voting against our rights. It's much better for us that you just let us know straight off the bat, because then we know not to attempt a friendship with you. There are plenty of people that I'm not friends with that I also don't hate, right? They're just people in the world. That's perfectly all right. Or if saying I don't have time to be friends with gay people feels so awful to you that you can't make peace with that, then start fucking having time to be friends with gay people. You can't just not say it and make it go away. Not saying it doesn't make it not true anymore. See, I had friends before I moved to the United States, and I've made friends since I left your community. I never changed my approach to making friends, but nothing I tried seems to work in your polyamorous community. And meeting up with the friends I have now and spending time with them has taken me far less effort than trying to make friends in your space. So if you don't have time to be friends with gay people, then don't deny it and pretend it's not true, because that's far, far more hurtful than just being honest about it. And if someone tells you that's homophobic, you can tell them that I gave you permission to say that, and then you can link them to this video. Also, Kat Black has some great videos on her experience as a black person in polyamorous spaces, so go check her out. I've been talking about my experience in one particular polyamorous community in the Bay Area, but I've visited and spoken to people from polyamorous communities in New Zealand, Boston, New York, and LA, and they're all so similar that I could be talking about any one of them and all of this would still be completely relevant. What about polyamorous discrimination? In 2018, the journalist and polyamorous Miles McLeay wrote a delightfully scathing article titled "The Self-Crucifixion of the Persecuted Polyamorist." In it, he argues that, aside from the one clearly important issue of child custody, most polyamorous people who paint their polyamory as an oppressed identity are exaggerating and overreacting, looking for victimhood where there exists only mild stigma. He writes about accounts from LGBTIQA polyamorists who told him that, in contrast to the threats, harassment, and violence they dealt with in revealing their LGBTIQA identity, the response to their poly status was fairly negligible. In a spicy take on the people in his own community, he reflects, "Perhaps it's inevitable, though, that some people who subscribe to the notion of their polyamory as a special, select, and enlightened movement, and bear the social burdens of no other minority status, will seize upon any chance to play up the potential cost of their romantic philosophy." He closes off the article on a more upbeat but still grounded note. "My hope is that poly people can assert their dignity and happiness without pretending that polyamory obviates the privilege that comes with whiteness, maleness, cisgender status, or heterosexuality. Because when they leap from sex-positive, open-minded allyship to describing polyamory as an essentialist and structurally oppressed orientation, they undermine their vision, insult truly vulnerable minorities, and collapse the fluidity of all human desire. In the broader perspective, the Western world's position on polyamory isn't hostile. It's indifferent, although maybe a bit curious too. If you're poly, all you need to do to alter negative perceptions of the lifestyle is live it well. The rest should take care of itself. What I wish had happened for me, because you really can't force people to be friends with others and no one can dictate what people do with their free time, is I just wish someone had told me the moment I first set foot in that space over 2 years ago. The vast majority of folks here are straight or bisexual and are highly invested in connecting with people they find sexually attractive, and since you don't mesh with that heteronormative value system, you're not going to make many connections here, and you're not going to feel valued or desired. So don't even bother trying. It'll save you so much pain if you, as a gay person, just avoid this group altogether. If you try and integrate with us, the lack of desire by so many in this community to connect with folks outside of their specific sexual attraction parameters is going to result in you feeling hella excluded and isolated, and that is going to fuck with your self-esteem so badly. Especially when you see all the straight and bi people out there being so desired and welcomed, and then they'll talk about how loving and accepting they feel the community is, and that'll make you feel even worse for being excluded. So just don't get involved. Don't even try. There is an amazing community waiting for you out there where you have inherent value and people will want to get to know you and spend time with you and connect with you despite not being sexually compatible. You will find your space, and it's absolutely not here in this poly community. Well, that sounded absolutely sarcastic, but I'm serious. Someone telling me that would have saved me a hell of a lot of pain. Here's the thing. I don't have a problem with these poly community values. I have a problem with how oblivious folks in these communities are about the way that their values affect others. If you're a straight or bi person in one of these communities, interrogate yourself. Interrogate the hell out of yourself. Do you only pursue connections with people you read as fuckable or dateable? That's fine if you do, but be honest about it. And don't preach your community to gay folks as a discrimination-free utopia you experience it to be, because it's highly unlikely that we'll experience it in the same way. Understand that your experience of your community is not and cannot be everyone else's experience. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with you posting this video because it makes your community look bad, or because it makes you look bad. I wanted to kill myself because I was thoroughly convinced of my own worthlessness. There is nothing I want to say to those people
Except it's not up to you if this story gets told. Because it's not your story to tell. It's mine. This video is for the gays and the lesbians and the people of colour and the trans folks who might find themselves in a similar situation that I did, in a community that doesn't value them, in a community that makes them feel isolated and alone. This video is for you. You are valuable. You deserve love, you deserve safety, and you deserve to have people in your life who love and value you. And it is your right to seek that out. If you're not getting that from the place you're in now, you are absolutely allowed to leave that space and seek that somewhere else. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you fantastic. There are people out there who are right for you, socially, platonically, romantically, and intimately. And sometimes as minorities, we have to look a little further and search a little longer, and that sucks. But you will find your community. You are stronger than you know. You got this. The Trevor Project LGBTIQA+ Suicide Prevention Call Center is available 24/7 at 1-866-488-7386. I need to make this very clear to the viewers. I do not want you going after my ex. I do not want to see you talking shit about them in the comments section. I do not want to hear about them getting dogpiled or berated. I have forgiven them. And that experience and that pain has been mine to process, not yours. It's not your place to get angry or indignant on my behalf, and that was not the point of this video. There aren't good people and bad people. It's not that black and white. My ex-spouse has done some amazing trans activist work, and I can never forget how much of an incredible rock they were for me when my dad passed away. They've also done a lot of shitty things. People are complex, like onions or Shrek. But I think there's an erroneous concept that's floated in the LGBTIQA community that bisexual and transgender people are more oppressed than lesbians and gay men, and that's just not true. There are so many other factors and variables, and it differs on a case-by-case basis. I've met enough homophobic bisexuals and racist transgender people to know that being part of a minority does not exclude you from enacting hurtful views or behaviors. And that's a good thing to keep in mind, actually, because it allows us all to acknowledge that we don't know everything, and we all have space to learn and grow. I was beginning to feel like I was crazy until this one person posted publicly about realizing that they were scheduling pretty much all of their time only with people they found fuckable. And then my ex finally began to believe me that I'd been trying my damn hardest to integrate myself into their polyamorous community, and it wasn't my fault that I couldn't. I wanted to be loved and supported there. I wanted to make friends there. The person who posted their truth gave me a gift, validation about my experience. I don't think that polyamorous communities are inherently bad, but I think they're very often very exclusive. It doesn't make them bad people. It means they have priorities that don't align with mine, and that's fine. But be real about that, you know? I have so much more respect for people who can say, hey, I don't think I can spend time with you because it doesn't fit into my life, than people who say they can and then don't, or people who just ghost me altogether. Have you ever been part of a polyamorous community? Have you seen or experienced what I experienced? This video has been over a year in the making and has been both terrifying and healing for me. My hope is that you watching have gotten some value from this too.